Hey friends, just a quick reminder before we get into today's episode, come join us over on our Patreon. That's where we release bonus episodes every other week, and we've already got over 20 episodes from 2023 that you can download and binge right now for as little as $3 a month. We've covered so many good books there: Haunting Adeline, Chateau, Gothicana, and so many more. That's also where we'll cover any books in a series we continue, so Serpent and Dove, High Mountain Court, Serpent and the Wings of Night. You can continue those series with us on Patreon right now. Finally, as a patron, we let you know what we're going to read every month, so you can read along with us if that's your jam. Anyway, that's all from me. On to today's episode. Because otherwise I think someone would comment like, wow, it's big today or something.
Wow, it's big today. Title of your sex tape. Walked right into that one.
I really did. I'm okay with that. It's a good one.
Welcome to Your Safe Space, the podcast your partner, friends, parents, whoever thinks is dirty. Don't have time to read books? Want to understand the jokes and the TikToks? We got you, fam. We're the Spice Traders, and we deal in spicy books. I'm Katie, and I need it to make sense.
I'm Liz, and I'm hypercritical. As always, we start every episode with 3 things. The first is a generic trigger warning. You can find specific triggers for this book in our show notes, so please check those out. Also, we do use foul language and talk a lot about sex. If you have sensitivity to any of this, please give this episode a skip.
Secondly, we talk about books. The whole book, nothing but the book, so help me goddess. If you plan to read this book and don't want something spoiled right now, don't listen to this episode.
Lastly, we acknowledge that a good book can hit you at the wrong time. The views expressed in our discussion are our opinion, and we absolutely don't want to diminish the work and the talent of the authors in our community. That said, we have some notes.
All right, so let's get into it.
Yeah. Yes, let's. Because if not, we're going to debrief the whole book.
Yeah, there's just really not a lot that happens in these chapters. But this is part 2 of The Destroyer by Meg Smitherman. And we will be covering chapters 13 through 27. And this will be the middle part, so we will not go over our ratings until the third part, which will be released in 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't listened to part 1 or read the book, please do that, because you'll be lost if you don't. So when we last left our merry band of assholes, Rue was being kind of shown out of a dining room of the royal court by a character named Deluc. We recently, at the end of part 1, realized that this character is the leader of the Children, which is kind of this culty, weird group of people that seems to have a weird amount of power in this court of Mirith. But she is looking for a way out and she can't find one. So I for sure thought in this situation that something nefarious was going to happen with this whole exchange, because like dude fully walks her to her room. And then I thought like maybe someone would try to steal the artifact or something.
So anything. I expected anything to happen.
Right. And it's just totally a non-event. Like
threaten her, question her.
Yeah. It's just, I guess, a longer amount of time for Rue to be like, oh, he's a pretty stand-up guy.
Yeah, which...
Girl, come on.
Fine, I guess. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious to us as readers that this guy's bad news, but Rue's kind of infatuated because he can talk about science with her. The look on your face.
Okay, I got frustrated later when they're like, and we will get to it, I'm going to say it right now, when they are... Okay, we're all going to look at the artifact, and we're all on board that it's magic, but no one else wants it to be magic, so we have to explain it scientifically. I'm just like, okay, but like, you don't have to remind me of that 27 times.
No, oh my god. Well,
and the children don't believe in science, and I'm like, okay.
This guy. Then why are they here?
And then why does Deluc believe in science? If he's the cult leader, he likes science.
I know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No.
But so Deluc drops her off and is basically like deuces. And she's like, oh, how kind. And she falls asleep and like everything's fine. And she's not woken up again until it's time to leave. So at the ass crack of dawn, Sibeth like bangs on her door and is like, we got to go. And so they leave.
That also, I was like, why is this It almost felt like they were leaving urgently.
Right.
But they're not. This is just when they plan to go, I guess.
I would have protested.
I would have been like, can you give me till the sun is up?
Yeah, I'm not a
Fully.
morning person, so this is just, you're making it harder on yourself if you're making me get up before the sun.
Also, you just like had me party all night. So, I mean, not really, but what you doing, guys?
But effectively. And so this weird scene ensues where she's like ushered out. She's like packed up, ushered into this like royal looking carriage. And like no one is there to say goodbye except for the regent and Diluc. Like Fenn's not there. Her brother's not there. And she like clocks it, but she's not like as disappointed as I thought she would be.
I know, like, and she seems to be more disappointed about Fenn, but then she pretty quickly is like, well, why would he come with me anyway? Which,
Yeah, you're right.
You're right. But I'd be pretty mad about my brother, but like her brother, she doesn't really question. She's like, all right, well, okay.
Yeah, I mean, especially since like you haven't seen him in forever, and then like both of them just kind of dipped before you could say goodbye at dinner. Like, it's just very weird.
It's very weird. And there's just like, okay, so I did picture this carriage, the Cinderella carriage, like,
Yeah.
just this round blue powdery thing.
Yeah. Because she does describe it as kind of being ridiculous. She's like, I'm not getting in that.
Well, I love the conversation she has. I don't know if it's with Sibith or it's with someone, but I think to the regent, she was like, I don't need this. Like, I can ride. And Sibith is like, no, you can't. You hate it. I saw you ride. You're going to fall to your death.
Right. Get in the fucking carriage.
I know. She's like, I am tired.
So she decides to get into this carriage willingly. And we learn that she'll be escorted by 3 riders. So the riders that we've come to know, Lear, Sibith, and Rosala. And 4 Kingsguards who are all male and unnamed. So before they set out, the regent and Diluc see her off, as I mentioned. And both of them warn Rue to be vigilant on the journey and keep the artifact safe. They instruct her when she's there to give them weekly reports of her research. And she commits to this willingly, even though she kind of bristles. She's like, I mean, I know what I'm doing. But
do you?
This commitment that she makes to like keep them abreast of her research is kind of a weird thing for Rue to commit to based on something we learned when we actually get to the tower.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it is weird.
Because they're basically like, yeah, you are going to lead the research, like, go for it, girl. But that's not a given, as it turns out.
It's definitely not. Which makes sense because she's just a student also.
Right. Exactly.
So that is weird.
So they start off through the town on their journey. And as they're going through the streets, Simon assaults the carriage bodily. Like, he just thumps against the side of the carriage and like climbs in through a window or something, seemingly for no other reason than to boast that he saw Rue and Diluc at the dinner last night and to wish Rue well. Literally no new information here.
And for such a weird entrance, like,
yeah,
he literally just like body slams the carriage, climbs in through the window. They have a weird conversation about nothing, and then he climbs out through the window. Also, there's a door. Like, why does he go through the window?
I don't understand why this scene exists at all because it gives us no information. It's bizarre as hell.
It's so bizarre.
And
like Manic Pixie Dream Girl Simon. I'm like, okay, what the fuck
truly.
are you doing?
And we were talking about in our debrief, like at this point, I have finished the book and I truly believe that half of this content could have been cut. This is one of those chapters that could have just not existed and I would have been fine.
Well, and when you had mentioned this scene, I was like, okay, we must get some valuable information at least. Where he's like, after Diluc left you last night, he was like canoodling in the corner with, I don't fucking know. But no,
right.
He's just like,
right. And
bye,
that would
Rue.
have kind of made sense because Rue is enamored of how attractive Diluc is. He's described as being very, very handsome.
yes.
So it could have been like this weird, like, oh, well, he's just kind of a fuckboy thing.
But that was also weird. So like, because only the regent and Diluc see her off, right? And Rue has this thought of like the regent walks away and Diluc follows her. And Rue comments like almost puppyish. And I like lost some of the appeal for Diluc. And I was just like, because of that, because he was following her. Also, I kind of got the feeling that the regent was more of the follower of Diluc than vice versa. So like that scene was weird.
Yeah, that was very weird.
And then so for this to happen to be nothing.
Yeah, big nothing burger.
Go through the door, you fucking weirdo.
Right, and it could have been just like a couple of lines like, you know, the journey was harrowing or, you know, long or whatever, but it was really nice to finally see Simon at the walls when he like caught up with us to say goodbye. Done.
That would have been fine.
Right.
Also, who are these guards that just let essentially a stranger climb in through the window of the woman you're guarding?
So good. Even Sibeth is just like, oi! And he's like, don't worry, I'm with the band or whatever. And like hops in the carriage. I'm like, Rue could be dead in 5 seconds. Like, you guys suck at your job.
I know, because I can't imagine. I mean, because Rue is really a nobody besides like the article she wrote. So like, I don't think her and Simon being related is like
known.
Big prevalent news. Yeah, because no one would give a shit.
Right. Everybody's just like, who?
You're like, what is happening here? Okay. It's fine.
So Simon leaves like a bat out of hell, literally. And for the rest of the trip, or for a good part of the trip, Rue falls asleep in the carriage. When she wakes up, she becomes aware that they've stopped moving. And when she peeks outside, she sees that the Kingsguard and the riders are having a bit of a standoff. It's clear that the Kingsguard want to get to Rue, and the riders don't want to let that happen. Rue is anxious. She doesn't really quite understand what she's seeing, but she tries to make a break for it out the other side of the carriage. Unfortunately, she makes a bunch of noise doing this, so one of the Kingsguard like tracks her and tackles her pretty easily. But remember, these guys are in like armor and shit, so when he bodily tackles her, he breaks some of her ribs in the process because he's so heavy. So Duder is like manhandling Rue, trying to like get her to cooperate. And Rue is fighting tooth and nail, but not doing a very good job because her ribs are broken, and also this man is huge, and she's an academic and hasn't gone through a training montage. So
thank God.
Fortunately, Sibeth appears pretty quickly and kills the man, shocking Rue. So she like pulls him off, leaves his dead body there, and basically looks at Rue and is like, get the fuck back in the carriage. But Rue can't like get it together. She's shocked. This is like the first time that someone's been killed like that in front of her. And so she's just kind of staring at these unseeing dead eyes of this guard and just like losing it a little bit.
Even though she just murdered like 30 people, but that's fine.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things that I liked about this book was, I'm going to say that I like it, and then I'm going to give it a caveat. I did like how realistically the author dealt with things like this, because I feel so often in these like fantasy like romance books that we read, like people die and there's not an appropriate amount of reaction from our protagonists.
That's a really good point. And it is because she doesn't know what happened at the artifact site. Like she didn't see anyone die. She just knows they're gone.
Right.
Which until we get to later, like I still had questions as to like.
Yeah, I still have questions. Having finished the book.
Oh, great. Okay, because I'm still not sold.
Yeah.
But you're right. That is a good way to like that shock of like, oh shit.
Yeah. My caveat is that I think that the author deals with it a little bit clunkily, because Rue will just be like going through her day and being fine, and then she'll like have this like freeze moment where she's like, I killed a man once, and then she like goes on with her day. And so it's a little bit ham-fisted in that way, but I think I understand what she was trying to do, and I appreciate it.
I killed a man once. Yeah, I do appreciate it. But you're right, it is a little odd. It's like someone who read a paragraph about PTSD and is like, I know what that looks like.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So a fight breaks out, and in the ensuing chaos, Rue is trying to get away, but again, she's kind of frozen and her movements are jilted a little bit. And another guard comes for her and starts manhandling her, right? Trying to push her towards one of the horses to try to like essentially steal her away. She's fighting again, giving him a really hard time. And this guy really feels like he's not into doing this job, because one of the other guards starts to approach and he's like, oh, brother, thank you so much for your help. Can you like deal with this creature? I don't want to, please.
So weird.
And Rue is convinced that this other guard is coming toward her to unalive her, right? And So she's like preparing for her fate. She's looking up into the eyes of like this helmet that's approaching her. And rather than running a sword through Rue, this guy decapitates the guard currently holding Rue.
So sometimes the wording is weird in this book. This was a part where it was disgusting, but it was very well worded, where it's like he talks about the sword going through his neck like a wire through clay. I was like, what?
Yep. Yep.
But it painted a picture.
Really good picture. It's a really sharp sword.
Yeah.
Ugh. So it's quickly revealed after this guard is killed like a wire through clay, that the guard who killed this other guard is actually Fen in disguise. And she's just like, what?
Oh, shocking.
Shock gasp. Who could have known?
I didn't know. I didn't suspect. I really thought that Fen was just like fucked off. And I was like, okay.
I mean, I thought Fen was endgame, but I thought he was just going to like pop up at the tower
tower
for some reason. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I pictured.
So he kind of like holds Rue and tells her that she's safe now. It's clear that she's in shock, but she's grateful as hell to see him. And so they kind of come back down from the adrenaline rush and regroup with the other battered riders. They learned that all of the other guards are dead. Obviously, the two that attacked Rue are dead. The riders took care of the third one, and the fourth one is obviously Fen. So really much more of an evenly matched battle. But after this encounter, the party is a bit in shambles. They don't really have a plan. They obviously can't just continue on and pretend like nothing happened because they were attacked by Kingsguard. So they're thinking there's treachery in this elite squad. So Sibeth is like, okay, let's split up. I'll ride ahead to Mirith to warn the region of this treachery. Rosala, you'll accompany the carriage back to the palace. And Lear, you and Fen will ride ahead to the tower with Rue as fast as you possibly can. So they do this. When Lear and Fen and Rue arrive at the tower, the other professors are shocked at the state of Rue because she's covered in blood, in and out of shock, and she's got like this gash on her face. She's almost passed out from the pain in her ribs. Like she's in a bad way right now.
She's in a bad way. I think one of the professors refers to her as like an unearthed corpse.
Yeah. Yeah. So Professor O'Brall, which she kind of takes the lead here. And I love her because she's described as having like a cloud of pink hair.
Yeah, she's the one who has like pink hair that's shaped like mushrooms or something.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Really.
I did love that.
It seems like her hair takes on different whimsical shapes, and I just love that.
I do love that. I do.
Not magically. It's like
she does it.
She
herself.
styles it like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so Abral kind of takes the reins here, and she's like, wow, you look awful. Did these men hurt you? Like, we're safe now. You can tell me. It's okay. And she's like ready to throw Fen and Lear in the dungeons.
Which I appreciate.
I do too. But Rue's like, no, they helped me. I just need a minute. Like, I'm fine. So Abral takes Rue to her chambers and cleans her up a bit. And this is the scene that we learn that Rue won't actually have carte blanche to study the artifact as she likes. She's not even guaranteed to be on the project. What will have to happen is that there will be a deliberation within the leadership of the tower, and that's how they'll decide who will lead the project and who will be on the project. So it's weird that she committed to giving updates about something she wasn't even sure she was going to participate in.
But I also feel like none of this deliberation had to happen. Like, this slight wrench... But it also makes sense because, again, Rue is just a fucking student. So I don't know why even the regent was like, you have full power, right? And she's like, I'm an undergrad, but yes.
I don't know why
whatever
she
she
wouldn't
is.
know how that works.
How the tower works.
Yeah. To your point about this, like, this whole, like, deliberation thing, like, this is one of those scenes that illustrates the, like, show up early, leave late kind of error that this author is making. Because this entire scene with Abral could have just been summarized by Rue, either in an internal monologue or a conversation with Fen or somebody later, but we're made to watch them from the courtyard all the way through the tower, up the stairs, down the hallway, through her room, being cleaned up, and it's just boring.
It's so boring, and it's just so unnecessary to have that level of detail.
Right.
I don't need it. I don't need it.
I don't need it. So Rue goes to sleep, and when she wakes up, She has an almost undeniable urge to touch the artifact with her bare hands, but only the thought of Fen makes her come to her senses and wrap the thing back up. So she's like, wow, that was a close one. I have to be more careful because this thing clearly has an influence over me, but I kind of like it because I'm the chosen one.
Like it. Her relationship with the artifact, I liked it most of the time, but then sometimes it confused me. So I was like, do you like this? And then she also seems to be like confused by certain things. I'm like, I don't know why. Like, I know I'm jumping ahead, but when she talks to it later, she's like, I couldn't do that. I'm like, it talks to you.
So one of the things that I really like about this book is I feel like the plot is new. I haven't read something like this before.
No.
And I really like that. However, I feel like the mechanics are clunky. So like the way that the relationship that she has with the stone is described and how it interacts or affects her or her other relationships. Like you were talking, I'm not quite sold on that mechanic because it seems contradictory at times.
It does, because sometimes she almost seems afraid of it, but then other times she's really possessive of it. And like that could be an interesting thing, like that my precious, like the one ring, like I'm afraid of it, I want it, it's mine. But it's not handled very well sometimes, and it gets confusing to me.
Yeah, the other thing that I think we'll get to in this part, but is that she purports to be a scientist who wants to discover magic, but her actions don't prove that point out, right? Like she very consciously makes decisions to curtail her ability to understand what's happening in the stone or with the stone. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't feel like a choice that you would actually make.
Yeah. And then it makes me wonder, like, is this deeper than it seems? Like, is she being like controlled by or possessed by the stone? But we don't get enough evidence of that. I just want an explanation.
Yeah.
The other thing, this is mechanically and a less interesting point, but I was consistently confused over how big the stone was because she, like, it's wrapped up, right? And sometimes it would be like in her pocket or like in her jacket. And other times she says it's like bundled into her arms. And if you say something's bundled in your arms, I'm picturing you holding like a blanket. Like it's like a big thing. So I'm like, is it just a little stone and like a lot of wrapping, or is it a big stone and like the wrapping how big is this thing?
I had that same thought too, because she very specifically has two bits of imagery. I don't know if it's in this part or at some point in the book. She describes it at once being the size that could fit in the palm of her hand in particular. She's described as being average. I'm pretty average. That's a very small thing for me, right?
Yeah.
But then at another point in time, she describes it sitting on a table and it looks like a loaf of bread. And I'm like, there is no loaf of bread that fits in the palm of my hand.
No. No, there's not.
So is it changing in size? Like, what's happening here?
Because if it's changing in size, no one really mentions that. But
no.
And the loaf of bread makes sense for like the bundled in my arms, but I certainly couldn't fit a loaf of bread like in my jacket pocket.
No, definitely not. Yeah. I have a feeling that that's just inconsistency. So as Rue's getting ready to go to the deliberation, a brawl comes in to collect the artifact and put it somewhere safe. And I'm a little surprised that they left it with Rue overnight to begin with, and they weren't immediately like, give that to me.
Yeah, especially if they're not even sure that she's going to be on the project, for them just to be like, you can keep that. You can keep your pet rock.
Yeah, exactly, with the googly eyes.
With the googly eyes. Especially when they know that it... Do people at the tower know what happened at the site yet?
Yeah, so the people at the tower, that's a good point, do know what... the kind of the bare bones of what's happening. Because the regent had written a letter to them beforehand, and also gossip. So they know Rue went to the site, destruction happened, they found this artifact, Rue and some people are traveling there to study the thing, and we'll learn later it's not giving anything away, but like the tower has split opinions over whether or not this is a good idea, because like this thing is basically an unknown bomb and they're just being forced to house it.
Yeah. We don't know how volatile this thing is, and you're just like, well,
no idea. Yeah. So as a brawl is taking the artifact, Rue panics at this thought of being separated from it, but ultimately gives the thing to the professor. She kind of talks herself away from the ledge. She's like, they're just going to put it somewhere safe. I can go visit it whenever I want. It's fine.
Fine.
So Abral takes the thing, and as she's leaving, she tells Rue that the deliberation is in an hour and to not be late. As Abral takes the artifact away and is like walking out of the room, down the hall, away from her, Rue can still feel the artifact's touch in her mind, and her panic at being physically separate from it subsides. She's like, okay, so even though I'm not in the same room, it hasn't left me. I'm good.
It still loves me.
It still loves me. I'm still the chosen one.
Yay me.
So she finishes getting ready, and she realizes how terrible she looks when she looks in the mirror. She's got dark circles under her eyes and a huge bruise from the fight with the guards on her face. It does occur to her that her reaction in connection with the artifact could also be a hallucination brought on by exhaustion, but she quickly dismisses that idea. She's like, man, I look terrible. Am I sure that this is real? No, it's totally real. It can't be unreal.
This made me think a little bit about, what's the name of that book? The one with Nock and like the Pokemon?
Oh,
Kingdom of Exiles? Yes.
Yes. Well done.
Thank you. Kingdom of Exiles, where she's like, oh, I'm looking sick, but I'm just tired. I'm not dying.
Definitely
Things
not
happening.
dying.
It kind of felt like this to me. Like, I don't think it's the same thing, but I was like,
So she brings up how terrible she looks pretty frequently, and I really wanted that to be tied into the artifact's effect on her in some way.
yeah.
But it's not. It's completely separate, but it is weird that she calls it out so much that it's completely unrelated.
It is weird. And like, so I want it to be related. I also sort of appreciate it from an author's standpoint. It's another thing that I like from an author, but it just wasn't handled very gracefully. Because a lot of times in these books, we will have like a fight montage and a character will get injured. And then we like, unless it's a grave injury, we never go back to their injuries. Like they're just good. So the fact that like she still has a black eye, she's still sore for a while. Like I like that realism because they don't have magic to heal her or anything. But she does bring it up a lot more than necessary for it to really serve no purpose.
Yeah, and that connection with things that just end up being red herrings. Like it's almost a thing that you want to introduce theories in your book from an author's perspective. Like you want to introduce things that make your reader think about it. But you don't want to do it so much that it feels like foreshadowing and then not deliver on that. And I feel like that's what the author's doing with this.
Yes, that's a really good way to phrase it.
But regardless, as she thinks about this, her thoughts turn to her friends, Archie and Gwyneth, and she wonders why they haven't sought her out yet, or Fen. And I'm like, girl, you got here less than 24 hours ago. Like, cool it.
Give them. Also, you don't know that Archie's even back. He could still be at that dig site.
That's true. But like, this is one of those instances where Rue is so self-centered. I'm like, girl.
I know. Like, you just got here. I need you to calm down.
Cool it. When would they have sought you out? You got here, you got your shit cleaned up, and then you went to sleep for like 14 hours. Like,
when would they have seen you?
They might have. You just didn't know.
Yeah, and also ostensibly, they've got shit to do. Like,
right. Like, this is probably a cool Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
They've got research or whatever.
And they probably also don't know that you are damaged.
Damaged. Yeah.
And Archie saw you like 4 days ago, so.
That's true. It really hasn't been all that long.
It hasn't been that long because she goes to the site. Everything happens immediately. They travel to where the regent is, which is like maybe another day. They're there for a night. They have another night on the road, and now she's here. Like,
right. It's like been a week.
Yeah, it has not been long.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, girl.
Calm
whatever.
down.
So she goes to the hall where the deliberation will be held, and both her friends actually happen to be waiting there for her. So I'd like to call out that we're 42% of the way in, and we finally meet a character we were ostensibly introduced to way too early. Cool. And that's Gwen, by the way.
Yeah, we didn't need to know about her.
No.
300 pages ago.
Nope, didn't need to. We didn't need to know how, like, so much about her. She could have been like, because she fully introduces Gwen in the first chapter.
First name,
She's
last
like,
name, how long they've known each other.
Her family tree, like,
Yeah.
all of this shit. And I'm like, you could have just said, Gwen and Archie and I, like, we're super tight.
Yeah.
And then move on. And then you could have added more information when we meet her here.
Exactly. Exactly. But now it's like, you already know her. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Their reunion is warm but not particularly interesting. And as they take their seats, Rue can't help but look for Fen and Lear, but she also can't help but feel disappointed when she doesn't see either of them there. And I'm like, poor Lear is getting dragged into your friend circle, and I'm not even sure that you know his last name.
No, I don't know why she suddenly cares about Lear. Because she doesn't seem to care about Sibith or Rosala.
Yeah.
Like,
who we never see again, by the way. They're just gone.
They're just gone. They're just going back to their day jobs. So
Right.
I don't know why Lear is like, now you're one of my friends.
I know. Well, okay, but there's a point in the book where we never see Lear again, even though he's there. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that was weird too. And like, that would have been fine if she didn't care about him here.
Right.
So I don't need to see him again.
Care about him here. And then I don't know if we'll get to it there, but at some point he becomes a Kingsguard. He's just like anointed.
Oh, yeah. And they like run into each other. She's like, and I was pleased for him. I'm like,
and they like affirm their friendship. I'm like, you've known each other for like 3 days.
well, and that was a point where I wanted the whole like Kingsguard
Treachery.
betrayal, to come back up, but like
It never does. I mean, not in this book.
no, because the fact that Lear is probably promoted because 3 of them are dead now.
Whoops.
I don't have to talk about that.
No. Is it that thing where like if you kill a Kingsguard, you get to take their place?
Well, maybe.
Yeah. So the deliberation begins, and Rue's friends urge her to advocate for herself and be the lead on the project. And Rue is like frozen. She's got deep, deep imposter syndrome. When students start to come up and be able to pitch their own hypotheses, Rue doesn't for a while. She's traumatized from the reaction of her paper when it was first published, and she doesn't want to be seen like a freak, essentially. But eventually she does make her way to the podium and basically says because she encountered and survived the initial reaction from the artifact, she believes that she's intrinsically linked to the artifact and the research into how it works. She seeks to prove that it is magical in some way. This hypothesis gets a lot of chuckles from the audience, and Rue takes her seat kind of like a little embarrassed. But she is confident in her hypothesis and what she said, and she believes that it's the right way to go. Toward the end, Gwen then goes up to the podium, and she starts by saying, I don't have a hypothesis. I just wish to, like, talk about some salient points. And she brings up, namely, that the rock is dangerous, and that anyone advocating to lead the research must realize that, and has likely weighed the possibility that their life might end as a result of the research, with the pro of being able to research the artifact. And she also brings up the fact that they've probably thought about the fact that Rue is potentially the only person immune to the artifact's effects, and they've also weighed that risk as well. And then she's just like, deuces, and goes sits down.
Which I did appreciate, but it was very much just like, I'm here to point out some things that maybe the reader didn't know, so we're going to go back now. Bye!
Yeah, and it's very like... It's couched very much like Gwen is trying to like make sure that Rue is like she has her back in that way.
Yeah.
But it also feels it also points out a glaring like issue with these deliberations. It's like every man for themselves and nobody's actually thinking about like what makes sense in some of these situations.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I'm not an academic. So what do I know?
I am, but it's still weird.
So Gwen's points quells the fervor in the room quite a bit. The lead professors call for a vote, so that's another weird thing about this deliberation. It's not just the professors that vote, it's the whole school. So they call for a vote, and they start with Rue at the request of one of the candidates who had thrown their hat in the ring. And when they call that vote, it's unanimous that Rue lead the research. Rue is then immediately ushered into a parlor where the professors proceed to express their trepidation at having to host this thing at all, especially given the events on the road. Rue understands where they're coming from and admits to herself that she never thought about how others would feel at the tower from her actions. And I'm like, we know you're self-centered. It's okay.
She is self-centered. I am surprised that this is a valid point. Like, this essentially wiped out a city twice and then was attacked on the road, and there's probably a lot of important research going on in this building for them to just be like, you can do it in the basement. I'm like, I feel like an off-site annex would be better.
Okay, an offsite annex would be better for so many reasons, and we will get to it when they actually start their research.
So many reasons.
So the professors are kind of like talking above her, and Rue completely spaces out during the rest of the discussion thinking about Fen. The professors kind of notice that, and Professor Abral is like, hey girl, you good? And she's like, where's Fen? Like, out of the blue.
She's so thirsty.
And the professors are like, oh, he and Lear are in the guest wing. Like, you good? And she's like, yep. And she immediately stands up and goes to find them. I'm like, you are crazy. So weird. So strange.
So strange. I would be questioning her mental capacity to, like, lead this research project.
Yeah, truly. Like, she's
more concerned with getting laid, girl. What's happening?
The social cues are just not very high with her.
No, not at all.
No.
Not a bit.
So she goes to the guest wing, but she immediately realizes that she doesn't have a plan because the guest wing has a lot of rooms and she doesn't know which one she's looking for. So she turns back to her own room and ends up running into Fen heading back from her quarters, like essentially looking for her, right? It's not that he's coming out of her room. He's just coming out of the wing that her room is in. So, like, they had the same thought, like, I'm going to go look for you. Fuck, I don't know what room you have.
Right, like, this is basically a dorm. I don't know where to go.
Right, there's no names on the doors, like,
nope.
No.
Nothing I can do.
So they're both elated to see each other. Fen touches Rue's cheek and asks after her health, and they end up spending a rather lovely day in the gardens together. As they talk, Fen agrees to stay and help Rue with her research. He says he couldn't think of anywhere else he'd rather be. Rue goes on to ask how he knew the guards would try something on the road, and Fen says that he had noticed a weird energy in some of the guards and courtiers at the palace when they arrived, but it wasn't until Simon whispered his suspicions at the end of dinner that he decided to act. He tells her that he kept Rue in the dark to minimize the possibilities that the guards would try to be more secretive in their movements. If she had known that Fen was with them, that might have given his cover away.
I have so many questions because what did Simon see to make him suspicious? Why did Simon trust Fen with that information?
Truly.
Like, I don't understand why everyone just trusts Fen. We don't know who Fen is. He came out of the fucking forest.
So, I have questions about that. And I hope what is happening is that he is influencing people.
That's what I suspect is happening.
Because that's the only thing that makes sense. And we see that a little bit, like, later when Rue's being, like, influenced by the artifact. So, like, the groundwork is there. I just really hope that that's what's happening. Because there's no reason for Simon to, one, know who Fen is. Two, trust him with any kind of information. Like...
Yeah, because that's the thing. When he approaches Fen at the dinner, like, aside from the fact that Rue and Fen were together upon arrival, like, that's all he knows about them. So to be like, hey, to the point that Fen then goes and steals guards' uniforms.
Right.
Potentially killed the guard he replaced, because, like, we don't know where he got the uniform.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Which, I meant to say this when that comes out, but I think Sibith is like, please don't tell me you stole that. And Fen is like, don't ask questions you don't want the answers to.
Yeah.
And where's that other guard? Is he just, like, tied up, like, hog-tied somewhere?
That's the best case scenario, yes.
Yeah, he's probably dead. But I have so many questions, like, why?
Yeah. Well, and even to the point of, like, Fen is allowed to participate in this research project because Rue just wants him to.
Right, because he's a self-proclaimed historian, but he is not affiliated with the tower or the palace or anything. Like, he says he's a historian. We have no proof of that.
He is the definition of a rando.
Yes. We don't even know if his name is real because it's not like we have driver's licenses up in here. But, like...
No. He hasn't shown any paperwork or anything like that.
No, and they're all just like, hey, you can stay here. You can be on the project. This is fine. Rue loves you.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about
it. Okay.
He has to have some power.
I hope that does come out in the second book because if it doesn't, that mechanic just doesn't work. So anyway, Fen goes on to vow yet again to protect Rue from any threat, including jealous academics or otherwise. When they return to Rue's room, she realizes that with Fen, she doesn't feel the pull of the artifact at all. She again asks Fen why it feels like she's known him all her life, but before he can answer, Gwen joins them.
I don't know at what point, but it was somewhere in here with her, like, realization that she doesn't really feel the artifact when she's with Fen. I know in the first part, we hypothesized that Fen was the destroyer. I wonder if Rue is somehow the destroyer, like reincarnate. Are you smiling because you finished the book?
I finished the book, and, like, it's both.
Okay. I don't think I like that, Catherine.
Like, so that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm here for this book. I mean, I'm gonna read the second one.
Yes.
Like, the author needs, it's clear this is the first thing that she's written and published.
So hopefully the next book ties it all together nicely. It seems like it's just a duology.
I think it's just a duology, yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Good. All right, proceed.
So Gwen joins them, and this will be a trend that you'll notice. Gwen is a study in cock blocks. Thanks, girl.
Oh my God, I had that note like 3 times.
It's just like, girl, read the room, knock, or something.
Nope. I'm here.
I mean, I think maybe to be fair, she does knock this time, but like, you don't have to answer the door, girl. Like, say 5 minutes.
No, like later they're like on the bed together and she's like, hello, I'm here.
Yeah, she just barges in.
Yeah.
So, turns out that Gwen has gathered as much of the bibliography of Rue's original paper as she can handle, like physically that she can hold. And she insists that both Fen and Rue join her and Archie for dinner. She also drops that Archie and she intend on helping Rue study the artifact as well. So this kind of becomes the research group. It's Fen, Rue, Archie, and Gwen, the foursome.
Which is why I feel like the whole thing of the deliberation didn't need to happen, because I feel like this was always going to be the foursome.
Right.
And do they not have a faculty sponsor?
Apparently not.
This is such poor planning.
I know. Well, there's the thing that I don't understand is that nobody's reviewing this research plan, and like, to your point about a faculty sponsor, like nobody's like, hey, have you thought about XYZ thing?
Yeah, like, and I know that these characters are older than the students I work with, but I'm just picturing like giving really important research to just 3 students and some rando off the street and not giving any supervision. Like, no.
I mean, kind of, but they're like graduate students.
They
right?
are.
So they're like, they're still early 20s. I was a moron in my early 20s.
Yes.
Like,
agreed.
You couldn't tell me anything. No, absolutely not. I'm not going to trust a 24-year-old with this research.
No, and it's such important research. Like, it was history defining stuff. It's already shown how dangerous it is. So you just be like, yeah, have fun with your rock.
It's very cavalier. And I will say, I wouldn't trust a 24-year-old without oversight, right?
Exactly. Like, you can
but there's
run
no
it.
Oversight.
That's where I feel like, I want to call her Awala.
Obral,
thank you. I feel like that she should have like, and I don't have to see it, so like I don't have to see it, but just this background of like she reads the reports first before they go to the regent or something,
right?
Or, like,
she gave us more ideas.
Yeah, she's with them at the annex that they don't have,
right? That they should have.
Yes.
She suggests that they use an annex instead of the dungeon.
Yes.
Anyway.
But
none of that
fine.
happens.
No.
So they go to dinner, and Fen and Archie are finally introduced. Fen is passed off as a historian, and it's a tense meeting. Archie clearly takes a dislike to Fen for the only reason that Archie still has feelings for Rue, and both Rue and Gwen know it. As they eat, Archie and Gwen press Rue on whether she'll be okay to study the artifact because, you know, she's had a lot of trauma.
So much trauma.
Dealing with it. And she reacts badly to this. She's being forced essentially to remember what happened. She's like kind of caught off guard because these questions kind of come. I mean, if they don't come out of nowhere, but there's no preamble to the questions, right? It's not like they're gently leading her into it. And so she kind of gets these flashbacks of Lady Marin and the devastation that happened at the destruction. And she doesn't handle it well. It's clear that she's got some kind of PTSD about it. So she's kind of spacing out a bit. verbally, she's protesting that she'll be fine.
Well, and this is terrifying because, to be fair, I did skim much of the narrative. But this is the first time that I remember reading about her remembering anything that happened. And so some of her flashbacks here and later are of like people dissolving into like their atomic structures. Like, that's so scary. What the fuck?
Yeah, like her memories definitely get more specific.
Yeah.
And that is a trend that we'll see with, because she has more than one episode of like interacting with the stone and something like this happening. But like the further she gets away from that interaction, the more clear her memories become. And I liked that detail. But it's terrifying what she remembers about the destruction. It's
so scary. It's not what I pictured. And I'm not mad about it because I like the detail of it, but it's really scary.
Yeah, it's just, it reminds me of like how people describe like an atomic bomb going off.
Yes.
So it's clear that Rue is not fine, and Fen steers her back to her room. He's like, okay, that's enough with the questions for right now. And when they get there, he tells her that magic could react to strong emotions and that she'll have to keep hers in check in order to study it. He reveals that he knows this because he studied magic as well. Rue is shocked but gladdened because she thought that before, when they had talked about magic and he said that he believed in it, that he was just telling her what she wanted to hear.
Also makes him more suspicious to me.
A little bit more suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
That's how I feel about him.
So Fen goes on to comfort her, and it's clear that he has a soft spot for her. But before anything really can develop, he tells her to get some rest and leaves her for the evening. Which is another theme and regular occurrence that we'll see that I fucking hate.
Yes. Me too.
And it's like a switch, right? Like they'll be close to like a kiss or an embrace, and he'll just like, it's like somebody redirected his programming and he'll like straighten up, back away, and be like, you should get some rest, and leave.
It's weird. It's exactly like that, and it's fucking weird.
Yeah. So some days later, Rue and Gwen are in one of the libraries gathering some more research material. But one of the things that I like about the tower is that they have a lot. It's not just a tower. Like that's the name of it, but the complex that they're in is much more like a castle-y place. And there's a lot of libraries here, and they're all different.
I liked that. I also like the clarification of like, it's not really a tower.
Right.
Because I was
That's
picturing.
just what they call it.
Boop.
Right, like an ivory tower kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they're in one of these libraries, one of the smaller ones. And Gwen is very juvenilely and stereotypically asking about whether Rue and Fen are fucking, but she asks it like, legitimately, are you, and I'm like, girl. You're adults.
Just ask.
The last time I asked whether somebody was sleeping with somebody like that, I think I was in high school.
Yeah. Because I feel like you and I've had conversations somewhat recently where it's just like,
so you fucking?
So did you do him?
Right.
Which is just say what you want to say. And I do appreciate that Rue is just like, she says something, and I loved the line of like, you're going to have to use language I understand.
Yeah. She's a very deadpan.
I know, because she knows what she's asking. She just refuses to give into it.
Yeah, and Gwen refuses to ask outright. So
it's like, I'm not gonna.
They're both kind of having this push-pull of like, you're not gonna ask, and I'm not gonna say. So finally, Gwen's like, okay, so you wouldn't mind if I made a move on Fen? Like, that wouldn't bother you? And Rue's like, okay, fine, I call dibs. Stop it.
I know, which I did. I did think that was a funny way to like. Even though she's not going to be an adult about it, I was like, okay.
Yeah. So then we get an interaction with Archie. And what you were saying in the first part about not being an Archie fan, I'm not Team Archie, like, at all.
There's just something about him.
He's a bad friend, and I think he's got big incel energy.
He's a bad friend. Big incel energy, and I hate it.
So let's get into this scene. Rue and Archie have tea in Archie's room, and he starts the conversation by asking, quote, I know everyone must be asking, but are you, all right? Not taken by madness or ready to leap out of a 5-story window or anything like that? And I'm like, fucking excuse me?
What an offensive way to ask that.
I feel like the author's trying to make him be like that awkward, like posh upper crust British dude, but wow, I would have left.
I would have left too. I would have left a few times in this conversation, and she never does, and it upset me.
Yeah. It's clear that their relationship dynamic is not healthy.
No. And he has no sense of boundaries.
No.
Or he's very incel energy, where he's like, you love me. We know you love me.
Yeah, come on. So, yeah, with that kind of energy, he does go on to try and rekindle what they had. Rue tells him that she doesn't feel that way about him anymore, and he accuses Fen of coming between them. Rue tries to assert that Fen is irrelevant, but Archie tells her to be honest at least with herself, if not with him. And it's clear that Rue and Fen are infatuated with each other. Rue asks to talk about something else, but the moment is tense and Archie starts like cleaning up the tea. So she's like, okay, I guess I'm leaving.
I guess I'll go now. I'll see myself out.
Yeah. And it's just one of those conversations that I know most of us have had this conversation where like somebody's macking on you. You're like, I no longer wish to mac with you. And they like bring in your new crush as like, it's their fault. And it's like, no, I do have a crush on them, but I still don't want to be with you. Like, they could not exist, and I still would not want this to happen.
Well, and that's what I appreciated about the way that this was set up, because it's very clear that Archie and Rue's relationship has been done for a while, like before Fen even existed. Right. Which I like, because otherwise you get into the whole like love triangle thing. But to your point, like, he has nothing to do with this. We've already talked about how we don't work.
Yep.
But then he brings up that insult thing of like, well, that was then. This is now. Could it be different?
No.
I don't know why it would be.
And there's a way to ask, like, that was then and this is now. Could it be different now? Without getting into this territory. Like, yes. One, don't try to make a move on me and then ask that question. Bring it up like an adult and be like, hey, I still have feelings for you, but... So I just want to ask, and you just have to tell me once, and that's it.
Yeah.
But like,
do you think
I just got to know?
We could try again.
Right.
Things have changed. Yeah. And don't be a child and bring up this new guy.
Right. And when you don't get the answer that you don't want, don't like poutily start putting away the tea and like effectively dismiss me.
Right. When like I thought we were friends, so very clearly you don't want to be my friend. Also.
No, you don't just want to be my friend. Cool.
Got it. Deuces.
So, after that interaction, Rue continues on to the laboratory wing of the tower where all of the non-dangerous artifacts are housed, and she finds her pots, all the ones that she dug up at dig site 33 and other places. She tries to calm her mind and center herself by thinking about how many lives touched these vessels in the past, but she's too distracted between what happened with Archie, her feelings for Fen, and how the artifact is affecting her. She can't get her mind to focus. So she determines to see the person who knows exactly what she's going through, Fen. She goes to the guest wing, and though she feels a bit foolish, she ultimately does knock on his door. He lets her in, clearly intrigued. She finds his room covered in books and papers and is impressed that he's not wasting his time at the tower. He asks what's wrong, and she tries to deflect, but ultimately confesses that she needs someone to talk to. She feels different, and she's not sure if it's a good thing, whether the world has changed or she has changed or both. One of the things that I like about the way that Rue and Fen interact is that Rue is a very evasive person, and every single time she tries to deflect with Fen, Fen's like, "You're deflecting again."
I really like that.
Yeah.
I love, and I like their relationship, but I just also don't trust him.
I like their relationship, but I'm also like not fully bought in. Like I didn't get the stomach butterflies.
No, because it is such a slow. I wouldn't even call it a slow burn because like we're not even burning.
Nothing's burning. Yeah, nothing's smoldering.
Nothing is smoldering. Like it seems. And I think that's because I don't trust his motivation, because I don't understand his motivation. We're like, she clearly is attracted to him. But we don't get the same, like, I don't get the same feelings from him. Like, he's interested in her for something, but, like, it doesn't feel sexual to me.
Right. And like the other plots in this story, not a follow-up question to be seen.
No. Not a one.
Like,
Not
she'll
a
try
one.
to ask, like, hey, why are you here? And he'll be like, I can't think of a better place to be. I'm like, that's not an answer.
No, he has a lot of really sketchy answers.
Yeah. And she's just like, oh, how sweet. I'm like, no, girl.
No, girl. No, what are you talking about? No.
So they end up sitting on his bed and have a bit of a moment. Fen tells Rue that he's read her paper multiple times and that she's an enchanting writer. He loves how she communicates and sees the world. She's entranced by Fen's flattery of her, but Fen again breaks the moment just before they can kiss or do anything more and tells her that she should get some sleep, which she does.
Well, and it's so weird too, because like she walks in, they're talking. He like goes out of his way to make space on his bed, sits on the bed next to her, and then is like, you should go to sleep.
And is complimenting her and like brushing her hair back.
Yeah,
and,
like and
all of
touching
these
her like
things.
face, and it's weird. It is like he's a computer and he's just been like, whoa, restart.
But that's why, like, if he was influencing people through some kind of magic, it would be really interesting to me if, like, every time he pulls back, he thinks that he's influencing her with magic and is just like, oh, wait,
Oh, but he's
You should get
trying
some
not
rest.
to. Oh,
Right.
Oh, I like that.
I have no basis for that, so it might not be the case. But
I hope that's the case because I do like that. Where she's
that
just
would explain so much about this.
that would explain so much. Where like he wants this to be purely consensual, and for her I think for her it is. I don't think he's manipulating her, but if he thinks that he is,
Yeah.
interesting.
And every time this happens, she's like, it's a little bit gaslighting for her because, like you said, she does have feelings for him. She's like attracted to him, like wants to like get a little bit physical. And every time this happens, she's like, we must just be friends. Like, this has to be just me.
This has to be in my head. Like I'm just really misreading all of these cues.
Right. And so she's kind of beating herself up about these interactions. And she's like, okay, cool. Just friends. He's a very interesting person. He's going to be good for research. That's cool. We can be friends.
It's fine. This is fine.
Totally good. I can keep it in my pants. I promise.
I promise. Cool.
Cool. But as Rue dreams that night, she dreams of Fen coming to her room and climbing on top of her and kissing her neck and touching her. And it's very clear that she wants to be more than just friends.
She wants to know him biblically.
Biblically. Girl, can I get your digits?
I will say that dream sequences like this, I'm fine with.
I don't mind that. Yeah.
No. Because you're also giving me information and you're not doing this weird like cookie I don't have to go on my rant about dream sequences again.
I mean, but you're more than welcome to.
Okay. I'm here for this.
Yeah. Because this also feels like relatable, right? Because it's like I dream about the things that I was thinking about before I go to bed most of the time.
Yeah. And that's how dreams work. If we have these hypotheses about Fen and what's going on, it confirms that he's not, if he's manipulating her, that he's not always manipulating her, that she has genuine desires.
Correct. Unless he can dream walk and he actually came to her in her dreams. But we don't know that. So
well, but we'll never know.
We'll never know. Maybe we'll have to read book 2. So Rue wakes up with a start and she's like hot and bothered. And she's like, wow, that was a lot. I need to like get it together if we're going to be successful. Yeah.
Well,
as she gets ready for the day, she finally starts to recognize herself in her own reflection, and she's pleased to know that she's looking more and more like herself. So the bruising is going away. She's looking less gaunt, filling out, the color in her skin, that kind of thing. So that morning is the first day of studying the artifact in earnest, and the supplies from the region have arrived. So when Rue requested to study at the tower, the region was like, if you need anything else outside of the tower, let us know. And I had a question about this. I was like, if you're going to send for more instruments, why do it at the tower? But it turns out the tower has most of these instruments. She just wanted her own copy of it, which totally tracks with who she is.
It totally tracks with who she is.
She's like, oh yeah, the tower has a couple of these, but there's like a wait list for months to use them or something like that.
And if I have the regent on my side, I'm going to get whatever the fuck I want.
Right.
Because the
Yeah.
regent did say, like, anything you need, like, we will either get you or get you the money to buy it. You just have to justify why.
Right.
And is her justification, like, I don't want to wait in line?
I mean, I think a justification is if I have to wait in line, it's going to be a couple months.
Which is fair, and they don't want that.
Right. So when Rue goes to receive the items, she realizes that they've come with some clingers on. Specifically, 3 members of the Children and a handful of Kingsguards. The cult members are completely unlike their charismatic leader, though, and Rue remarks that they almost feel like animated corpses because they are so unemotional. The other thing about this is that there's a letter that comes with these people that basically is like, don't mind these folks, please house them, like, blah, blah. But the letter specifically asks about, you know, if this one guy is still at the tower, like, he'll look after them or something like that. That never comes up again.
No, it doesn't. And that was weird.
Yeah, why bring it up at all?
Yeah, if, you know, I have a lot of questions like that in this whole ass book. Why bring it up at all?
Right. So Rue and Professor O'Brall go into Professor O'Brall's office, and this is where they review the letter that the regent sent. So along with saying, hey, these people are there, it says, or it asks specifically that the children be allowed to supervise their research, and Rue bristles at not being fully trusted on her own. But it also addresses the mention of treason, right? So they sent Kingsguards. Kingsguards were the ones that attacked Rue on the road, but the letter is basically like, the threat has been dealt with, and then moves right the fuck along.
Which I would not take at face value. Also, who are these children that are going to now supervise me?
Truly, like, so weird.
It's so weird. But yeah, I didn't feel great about the, don't worry about the treachery.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Hand
Threat's
wave.
been neutralized. Hand wavy stuff.
Right. Another letter has been sent for Rue specifically, but she doesn't get a chance to read it, because O'Brall presses Rue about Fenn's involvement in the research as well. It's clear that she sees him as a distraction, but one that she can't prevent Rue from indulging in. I'm like, yes, you can. He's not a student.
Right, he doesn't have any right to be here. Like, you could exclude all of these people. You could kick the children out. Like,
It seemed like such a throwaway line to be like, well, I can't stop you. I'm like,
but you can, though.
you can. Okay.
You 100% can. At the very least, you could stop Fenn from being involved in the research.
Yeah, like,
Because you don't know him.
Academy business. Get out of here.
Yeah, you don't get to just be here. Also, again, I imagine there's a lot of research happening at the tower. That's kind of the whole point. Some of that has to be relevant to the government. So, like, this rando's just free reign in this place.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Rue joins her fellow researchers down in the dungeons, where guards have already been posted. When they're alone before the children arrive, Rue shares all that she's learned from the regent's letter, along with her own suspicions. She argues fervently that she trusts DeLuc enough to believe his followers wouldn't intentionally stifle their research, but it's clear that she has a soft spot for DeLuc for some reason, and that feels naive to me, and her fellow researchers also don't think that's a good idea. Fenn patently dislikes DeLuc and says so out loud.
I don't understand why she just trusts DeLuc.
It's such a bad call. Like,
it's such a bad call. And it doesn't make any sense. Like, you met once.
Well, I think one of Rue's, like, fatal character flaws is that she's easily flattered.
She definitely, like, she's got a big ego.
Yeah. And DeLuc obviously saw that, and immediately everything that he says to her is flattery, right?
Yes, which works. And he is a cult leader, literally.
He is charismatic. That's kind of their shtick.
Kind of their shtick.
The merry band of assholes agrees to be civil with the children, if only for Rue's sake. And so they go on with their day. They spend most of that day unpacking all of these instruments and getting ready for their research in general. And once the day is done, Rue is back in her room in the evening, and she reads the other letter that was sent along with the instruments, and it turns out that it was from Simon. He warns her that the children expect results quickly, and if they don't feel she's progressing, more will show up and attempt to properly motivate her, though he's not sure exactly how they intend to do so. And I'm like, what?
I don't like that.
I
don't like that. And I don't understand who Simon is and what he knows and what he sees.
He doesn't seem particularly useful.
No. No, he doesn't. Because even this letter and this threat, I mean, it's creepy. I think the whole like more will just keep coming. But like, what are they going to do? Are they going to torture her? Like, what are you warning me of? And I can't. Research is research. I can't make the results come any faster than they're going to come. Not really.
Right. Well, and the whole thing about Simon's warnings / like bad feelings about the children is he never gives her a good reason. Like, he's just like, I have a bad feeling about them. And she's like, okay, well, tell me more about that. And he's like, I'd rather not.
Right. And no one else really will either. I mean, even Fen doesn't particularly explain why he doesn't like DeLuke.
No, I mean, Fen seems to be purely motivated by jealousy because DeLuke is charming and Rue, like, turns it on for him.
Yeah. But also, I'm sorry, Fen, you were the one who ignored her at dinner.
Truly.
Why she talked to DeLuke. Children.
Yeah.
They're children.
Like, Rue is definitely at fault here, but I think so is everybody else. Like, nobody's giving her a good reason why her thought process is wrong.
Exactly. She doesn't have a good reason. And she's not being told why she should rethink anything.
No.
Like, she's not really being challenged. She's just being vaguely warned.
Beware.
Beware of the children.
So the next morning, Rue goes straight to the dungeons and discovers that Lear has now turned into a Kingsguard, as we mentioned before. And he is one of the two standing watch that morning. She's delighted as they greet each other, and they kind of have this weird, like, oh, we're friends. It's so cool that you're here now. And I'm like, I have so many questions about how this happened.
How it happened, why we should care.
Right. And poor Lear is just there for like 5 minutes, and then for like a good 25% of the back half of this book doesn't exist.
So why was he even introduced as a person who matters?
I don't know.
Okay.
So she continues inside and she finds Fen already there, and before long they are joined by Archie and Gwen as well. It seems that Archie is all better now because Rue remarks, quote, she saw in his easy smile and his interactions with Fen that any lingering wounds between them had been healed. And I'm like, somehow I doubt it.
No, there's no way in hell. There's no way in hell this isn't going to be a problem.
And also there's no reason for it. Like,
no. There's
it's
no
almost
reason.
like the author didn't want to write like that animosity anymore. And so she was like, okay, we need to get rid of this.
Then why did you introduce the animosity?
Truly. And Archie, from here on out, becomes a non-entity. He does not have a personality. He doesn't have a pivotal role in the story. And I'm just like,
why are you here at all?
Yes.
Like, why even introduce any of the romance, conflict? Like, why are you here?
It's just another one of those mechanics that I think is pretty ill-conceived.
Yes.
Not ill-conceived, ill-executed.
Yes.
So Rue kind of starts the day by laying out her research plan, which has 3 phrases. 1, what is the nature of the object? 2, what is the purpose of the object? And 3, is the object magical? I like this structure, but she doesn't go into any more depth as to like what kind of experiments or like what the gates are for like each one of these things.
Yeah.
And this is really where professorial oversight would be key, I think.
Yeah, because I would be like, okay, define nature. Like, you're looking at physical substance? Are you looking at like its origin? Are you looking at like, there's a lot of additional questions here.
Yes.
And how are you going to decide if it's magical if no one believes in magic?
How are you going to prove that it's magical if you refuse to interact with it in a way that elicits a magical response?
Well, and this is like, I know it doesn't matter, but the whole thing is that they're trying to prove all of this scientifically. How can you prove something is magical scientifically? Doesn't that negate the magic of it? Unless you're trying to disprove that it can be proven scientifically. That's confusing.
Well, it's like inherently they have this disconnect between science and magic, and I'm like, if I'm thinking about other magical systems, you could approach that scientifically because like the magic has rules and is repeatable.
Yes.
Therefore, you could run an experiment with magic, but the way that you're approaching this, you're refusing to interact with any potential magical properties, like your like intelligent bond with this stone.
I don't know why that like for some, okay, that's not the problem I have with her even running this project, because she's so cagey about things she knows. Like, no one else seems to know about this bond, but that seems to be relevant. It doesn't seem to be. It's 100% relevant to all parts of your research.
Yep.
Why do you have this bond? Where does this bond come from? That should have been one of your phases.
Yeah, but all kinds of don't worry about it.
And then, like, are you protecting the artifact? I don't understand. I don't understand.
Nope. The final thing they agree is to use oven mitts to handle the object at all times. Which, okay.
Not just, like, gloves?
I'm just picturing, like, I have those a little sweary.
Yes, that's what I'm picturing.
Like, bright colors that say fuck, and I'm just like,
I'm ready.
I have an artifact.
I don't understand why it would be oven mitts and not gloves. It's like, don't you want to be able to use your fingers?
Yeah, at least have the articulatable ones, right?
Yeah, no, just... And I picture them being, like, very oversized, like...
Oh, yeah.
Be a little sweary, but, like, Mickey Mouse sized.
Yeah, yeah. So Rue continues on to unwrap the artifact, and she has a momentary pang of jealousy that maybe Archie or Gwen might have a similar connection with the thing, but she quickly tamps that down. She's like, that's ridiculous. When she sees the thing again, she stares at it for a while until Gwen calls her back to reality by going, are you good, girl?
You good? You having a moment with this rock?
And Gwen again asks Rue if she'll be okay studying the thing, given the past events. And Rue inwardly scolds herself for being so obvious while protesting aloud that she'll be fine. And she literally says, like, I can't be so obvious about this. And I'm like, why not? It's like you're a teenager sneaking around with, like, a bad guy.
I know. I don't understand why you can't be obvious about this. Because, again, I think your connection is really meaningful. You've been through a trauma, so that trauma response is fair, which is why Gwen's asking you about it in the first place.
Right. And you advocated that you had a special connection to this thing in your defense, like in the deliberation.
Oh,
so, like,
I forgot about that.
You use this as an opportunity to, like, expand upon that.
I forgot that was, like, her primary argument.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, Rue.
So they go on to spend the morning taking rudimentary measurements like the size, the weight, the refraction, etc. And at midday, they are joined by the children, and we learn their names. Inda, Ranto, and Nell. Rue had thought that these children would stay at the fringes, observing, but instead, they're, like, all up in everybody's business, asking inane questions the whole time. Like, literally questions like, what are you doing when somebody's measuring the thing?
Why are they supervising this?
This rubs everybody the wrong way, but Archie in particular seems to have a temper that easily flares. And Rue has to pull him aside and be like, dude, be cool. Like, get your shit together.
I feel like this temper is going to be a problem.
Dude, right? Some days later, Archie and Rue are in her room trying to write a letter to DeLuke on their progress, which hasn't been much. They talk about how it's clear that the children aren't scientific, nor are they looking for a scientific breakthrough because they don't understand half of the things that Rue and her colleagues are doing, nor do they seem able to parse the lies that Rue and her colleagues tell them about what they're doing. It's clear that the children are hiding what they're really after, but neither have a clue as to what that is.
It's also shady. And again, I don't understand why they're allowed to do this.
I don't understand why they're allowed to do this. And Rue mentions the fact that her and the rest of the researchers are lying about what they're doing. And I'm a little unclear as to why they're lying. Because on the one hand, they seem to be, like, lying about results that they're getting. But I don't understand why they would do that.
I don't understand why they would do that either, because they don't seem to be trying to lie in their letters to DeLuke.
Right.
So why are you trying to manipulate the children?
I don't know. It's very weird.
I don't get that. Unless they're lying just out of, like, you're annoying, so I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's kind of maybe the other vibe that I was getting, which makes sense.
It does make sense, but it makes for a confusing story.
It does, and they never come out and say that, so you're left to kind of infer what she's talking about.
Because it could be one thing where it's like, they asked what I was doing as I held up a ruler, and I said, like, I'm seeing what color it is. Like,
I'm divining its nature.
Yeah. That was one thing that I did notice in this part, because the first part I mentioned that this book doesn't seem like it's taking itself seriously, like it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. That goes away.
It does go away. There's none of that left here.
No, which was a little disappointing because I didn't understand the nature of that, and now I super don't understand the nature of that, and it tells me that must have been meant seriously. But I liked that stuff, so I'm kind of like, okay, well,
I did too. Like the cavalier nature of it,
yeah,
was fun.
It was fun. Like I didn't know I had knees.
Yeah. So 2 weeks go by and nothing meaningful is gleaned. The children approach Rue and ask her to speak to the rock directly and see if it reacts. Rue, of course, is caught off guard because she feels connected to the thing and it feels like they're scratching at that knowledge. All of the other researchers in the room are like, that's a completely stupid thing to ask. Why would you do that? Like, you don't have any purview over this research. And they're like, actually, we do. You're going to do it. And Rue's like, I said I would do it. It's fine. It's a weird kind of power struggle.
It is a weird power struggle because, again, I don't understand why they're allowed to have any purview over the research. But I can't blame the other researchers to be like, this is a stupid thing to ask for. Because I picture from their perspective, it's like, I'm picturing like a normal like chemistry lab with beakers. Like, walk up to the beaker and say hello.
Right. Okay.
What's it going to do? And they're like, no.
So Rue agrees, and she can feel that the artifact is excited at this notion too. It's clear Rue doesn't have a choice, as I mentioned, so she agrees. She goes to the thing, leans in close, and asks aloud and in her mind, "What are you?" The thing responds by flooding her senses with images of things that ostensibly have happened in its past. Slowly at first, she sees a sky darkened with soot and storm clouds, a figure in a dark cloak, but then the images come too fast that she can't parse them and it overwhelms her and she passes out.
Oops.
She isn't out long, but her vision is gone for a bit, though it returns more quickly this time. Fen covers for her and takes her out of the dungeon to her room under the guise that she likely fainted because she didn't eat breakfast.
I don't know why anyone buys that.
I don't either.
It's too... The simplest answer is that something happened with the artifact.
Right.
And she passed out.
Well, and the only people in the room who believe that are Archie and Gwen.
Right.
And the children clearly don't.
No, because it's a stupid thing to believe.
Right.
Oh, she's just hungry.
Oh, her delicate woman constitution.
We must get her some cookies, which is all we ever see her eat. But okay.
I know.
I'm okay with that.
In her room, Fen tries to get Rue to tell him what happened, what really happened. She's under the effect of the artifact, though, and somehow Fen is as well, and it strikes me almost like Fen is a succubus trying to use his powers against Rue to get answers, because he, like, pulls her close, kisses her neck, asks her if the stone, like, answered the question that she asked.
It's a weird scene.
It's very weird because they're both into it, but like Rue is very out of it. Like
she talks about how she
can't
feels
think
drunk, like really
Yes.
drunk.
Yes.
And it's weird because Fen is also like simultaneously flirty and enticing, but also like kind of angry. Like it's weird.
Yeah, he is angry. Like there's an undercurrent there. Like he's not like shouting or anything, obviously.
No.
But
he's like, what did
Rue
you
can
do?
Tell.
Yeah.
So Rue like takes a breath and is able to push Fen away. She's confused and doesn't understand what's happening. She feels they both must be affected by the artifact, but it all feels strange. As she's thinking about like what could be happening, she thinks about those last moments before she passed out and realizes that she saw a darkness coming from the stone at the last moment, and realizes in that moment that if she hadn't have passed out, she likely would have killed everybody in the room.
Whoops.
The realization shocks her, and she finally admits to Fen that the stone answered her. Fen tells her that he suspected as much because he saw something in her eyes before she fainted and knew there was something that she wasn't telling him. She realizes that he suspected that for much longer than just today. Rue goes on to confirm his suspicions and goes on to ask why he trusts her so much. He tells her he returns trust freely given, which is a really cagey answer that she asks no follow-up questions about.
She doesn't ask any follow-up questions ever, and he gives really cagey answers all the time. To me, that question of I return trust freely given, she should be like, why do I freely trust you? That's the question.
Right. Or how do you know, like,
how do you
that
know I
freely
trust you? Yeah. It's fucking weird, man.
So she asks about what happened between them, that steamy moment, and he says he didn't sleep well, and he apologizes for acting ungentlemanly in his fear for her. He's like, I was concerned. I took that out in an inappropriate way. I'm sorry. But Rue can tell that he's holding something back from her. But of course she doesn't act. She doesn't ask about it.
Nope. Even though he was just like dragging her secrets out of her.
Right. So before they can talk further, Archie and Gwen barge into the room. Cock block of the century. They tell them that the children made them write down the whole thing so that they could report it back to DeLuc.
Do they not know how to write?
I guess not.
Okay.
And after they relay that information, Gwen shoos the men out of the room and helps Rue into bed, seeing clearly that she's exhausted and unwell. When Rue wakes up, she's alone, and she remembers the moment before she passed out as the stone had reacted to her. So we were talking about earlier how when things like this happen to Rue, her memories of them start really hazy and kind of undefined, and as she gets further away from the moment, it becomes clearer and clearer what happened. And this is one of those examples. So in this memory that's coming back to her, she sees the children's expression as this darkness comes from the rock. Their expressions morph into something predatory, and she realizes that they know that she can elicit a response from the object. And that's bad news bears.
It is bad news bears. And the predatory nature is
not great.
So scary.
So she determines that she has to know as much about these children as she possibly can and goes immediately to the nearest library to try to find more information about who they are and what they want. She's ultimately unsuccessful, but then she thinks about Simon and maybe he'll know, and so sends a letter to him via pigeon to ask, and I can't help but wonder, girl, why didn't you do that to begin with?
I don't know. I don't know why she doesn't ask any follow-up questions. And Simon already reached out with warning, so I would have responded immediately. And I also don't know why she doesn't ask Fen, because Fen very clearly, like, why? Tell me why.
Yeah, it just feels like she has these avenues where she could find out more about the children pretty easily, and she just decides to not use it.
No, she doesn't. And then I think I was hardcore skimming at this point. But even like the letter she writes to Simon, she's trying to be like really cagey in what she's asking.
Right.
But I also feel like asking like, yo, tell me more about the children isn't that weird of a question.
It's not, especially because she could have couched it as like, hey, they're helping with my research. I would like to know more about them. Can you tell me more about them?
Yeah. And like you said, they want results. Do you know what they're looking for?
Right.
Also, I know that these are adults, but because their name is the children, I picture children every time, and it's creepy as hell.
Especially with that like predatory glint that she talks about.
Yes. I just picture 3 children in the darkness with this like predatory stare.
Because they're dressed in white and they all have like close cropped hair. So they all look the same. It's terrifying.
It's so scary. And like, they're so creepy to me.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so curious.
So that is where we will end our coverage of part 2 of The Destroyer. We will pick up in 2 weeks to finish the book.
I'm so interested, but I feel like nothing happened.
So that's the thing. Like, things happened, but they happened at such an elongated pace. Yes. We didn't need all of that.
No.
A little bit of editing could have gone a long way in this book.
Yes. But I am interested, and I want to finish it, and I want to talk to you about it, because now you finish it, and I see your faces.
Yeah, I'm torn because, like, I'm glad that I finished it. I feel like I'm ahead, but now I'm like, I feel like I can't, like, hypothesize with you as much now that I know what's happening.
Sorry. Just it's a couple days, what we're going to do Thursday. I realized we didn't actually end this episode. Sorry, but I got really excited.
Oh, that's okay. So until next time, we'll see ya. Bye.
Bye.